So looks like there's no bad news career in public speaking. Did very well there, thank you very much. And it's really good that the amount of groups that are represented today here today. But obviously, this is about us all participating in the campaign. So I'm going to ask you all to do a bit of charity work, if that's okay. So I kind of think that people's wars and obviously fight together. So say it loud, say it clear. 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 Well, my next speaker on the invite is Pete Billington from Lancashire Association of Trace Councils. By chance, we happen to be in the city today. We've got out of Lancashire. And I'm really pleased he's been supporting from the very start. I wanted to get involved and express his solidarity. He's a long-time anti-racist, anti-fascist campaigner. I'll hand you over to Pete.
Thanks very much, Amin. Could I bring the solidarity of the Lancashire TUC to this meeting and to the aims of it? And what I'd like to do is just to say that, I mean, I thought that the Tory approach to asylum seekers and refugees couldn't get any worse. But this bill actually sums up some of the worst aspects of some of the worst actions of the Tory party in many a year on this issue. What I want to do is briefly to talk about the context to this bill, because it just shows that it's absolutely unnecessary. It's purely sending out a public message that this government wants to say to the public, support us, we believe that you're hostile to people seeking asylum or refugees, and we're going to throw out this big bill to show you how awful we are, and we know that you'll support us at the next election on that basis. Well, I don't necessarily think that's the case. For a start, the context to the background of this bill is the fact that asylum seeking and refugee applications in this country are particularly low and have been over the last 4 or 5 years. So it's not the case that there's a massive influx of people wanting to come to this country. It's purely a public relations exercise on the part of a deeply racist attitude by the Conservatives to try to improve their political standing. What is going to happen, and as Amin referred to, almost impossible to be an asylum seeker or refugee granted that status in this country, but it's going to be even more difficult to even arrive in this country legally. It's extremely difficult now to arrive legally because there is no safe and legal route to do so, which by definition is what an asylum seeker would normally be in the position of. That if you're fleeing to seek asylum, it's not the case that you're going to look for a visa to leave the country that you're seeking to escape from, or the conditions in which you live. That you're escaping from something which is immediate and draconian. But what will happen if this bill goes through is that because all attempts to support those seeking to enter this country will be regarded as illegal, it would create absolute difficulty of an order which has not been seen before. For example, the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, who might happen to come across refugees crossing the channel, will be deemed to have acted illegally by giving them support if they pick them up. Now that is absolutely unworkable in terms of a humanitarian attitude towards human life, but it's also unworkable from a legal point of view, I would have thought. But it comes back to this, that the Conservatives want to show that they're harsh and uncaring about those seeking asylum. They tie it into the issue of immigration and tie it into the issue of the underlying racism which they represent. So I don't think that many people support that point of view. I think they're going to attempt to push it for as far as it's worth, but I think the legal drawbacks and the humanitarian drawbacks of this legislation will lead to it being widely undermined and widely seen as unworkable. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, I think Pete's so right about this. I mean, they're trying to, Priti Patel's trying to create the same graveyard that's been created in the Mediterranean. She's trying to create that same graveyard in the English Channel. And we cannot let that happen. We cannot allow people that genuinely are seeking asylum to be left in a situation where they're not allowed a legal route to enter this country. We are the majority that want to see humane and asylum policy. I think the Tories are in the minority, and we have to make sure that we continue to mobilise and build a campaign that can show that we're the many and that we want to welcome refugees rather than have further pieces of draconian legislation. The next person I wanted to invite, who's supported getting involved in this campaign from the start, is Denise McDowell from Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit. So I want to thank her for coming to speak today and being involved in helping us to set this up in the first place. And hopefully out of it, you know, if you do want to get involved in the wider campaign, you know, hopefully all the organisations and all of you here today, we can become a stronger force as we fight this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. If you're a bully, then what you do is you pick on the people who are the least likely to be able to fight back. And that's exactly what this racist piece of legislation is all about. It's about distracting from the inadequacies of the Home Office and its current asylum system. It's by blaming others when it should be looking at itself. There are so many people who are waiting for their asylum claim to be heard that haven't had a chance even over the last 18 months to get an interview or to have a decision on their claim. You've got adults who've been waiting in hotels for the last 18 months who are just sat there with no prospect of moving on. We're representing 100 children at the minute who are still waiting for their asylum claim to be acted on. Those children are suffering mental health problems, all sorts of issues arising from the fact that the Home Office itself is incompetent, and instead of spending its time writing legislation like this, which will not have the desired effect, it will not stop people traffickers. All it will do is make people's lives much more difficult than they already are, will add more people into destitution and open to exploitation and poverty, and it will make do everything worse. The hostile environment, which is all around us, whether it's in the NHS, within local authorities, within schools, this is another part of it, and it's a movement towards making this country one that is completely unsustainable and is so far to the right that none of us, I think, here would ever want to be a part of it. We have to do everything that we possibly can to stop the bill. This is only the beginning of the fight, it isn't the end. If the bill goes through, which it may well do, there will be loads of opportunities to challenge it in law, but also in campaigning. And that's something that we have to commit to today, that we're in this for the long haul and not just for the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hear it again. Say it loud, say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here.
Say it loud, say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here.
Say it loud, say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here.
Brilliant, thank you. I don't know who to pick up next, but I know that Jonathan wanted to say something from Refugees Asylum Support, is it? Is it a youth group? I don't know if Jonathan's around.
I'm just looking for my phone.
It's a lovely windy day in Manchester as ever. Jonathan.
Hello everyone, hello. We're gonna say it loud, we're gonna say it to me welcome here. 1, 2, 3. Say it loud! Refugees are welcome here! Say it loud!
Say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here! Say it loud!
Say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here! Say it loud!
Say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here! Thank you very much. As you all know, the government is passing on a new law. We're going to show
Oh yeah, it kind of. Yeah. Pretty good. It's slowly going it. Yeah. Just got, yeah, man. Well done, man. Well done.
We welcome in this country because anybody
Seems busy on something else. Right, we'll move on then. There's someone from, does Russia want to speak on behalf of Statesman now? Yeah.
Hi everybody, I'm speaking now on behalf of Status Now for All, which is the bottom banner there on the left. It formed in March 2020 in response to lockdown, because for many of us who are here and around the UK, who've been working with people who don't have their status for many years, we knew when lockdown happened that hundreds of thousands and actually over 1 million people would really struggle in a new way in terms of being able to get access to housing and healthcare and food. And so on the 26th of March 2020, it started off with about 35 organisations from around the UK and Ireland. It's now getting over to 140 around the UK and Ireland, who put out a call for Status Now for All. For everybody who doesn't have status to get their status now, irrespective of why they don't. Whether they've been failed by the asylum system, trafficked into the country, student visas that have gone, rejected on some level or another. Because unless we have that, we do not have equity of access to housing and healthcare and food. And I'm not the only person standing here who knows of people who have died during COVID because they haven't had that access to housing and healthcare and food. I'm not the only person standing here who knows of people who have ended up killing themselves because they felt so bad. And that's why this, and the word for this, is solidarity. And that's why this solidarity today is so vital. And I do believe, actually, that Manchester is leading the way today by this connection and this bringing together systematically between trade unionists and organisations of people that are involved in asylum or facing problems around their asylum. Because the real site of power, as we know, is with workers. And it's workers, whether they're documented or undocumented, that are going to change this law. And we have to believe, and I do believe, that we will win. We will stop this. We will tear it down. But the only way we're going to do it is through the solidarity together. There's just two more things I wanted to say. I wanted to give a big shout out to the Black Members Group from the TUC for the Northwest and the Unison people, and Amin in particular, because what they have done today is very important in taking that lead, and also because they are being practical. So if you're in this square and you got here and you've got a bus fare to claim back because you're living on nothing or the lowest amount of money, please come to Ali Mali. Can you put up your hand, Ali Mali? Just so people know who to come to and get your bus fare. And this is the kind of concrete, practical action, because this is really what we need. It is not the case that people who are without their status are not perfectly able to lead this alongside the rest of us who do have our status. And it's this solidarity that's going to do it. One last thing I want to say, I said it here a couple of weeks ago when the Tories were in town. I listened very carefully when Boris Johnson trotted out his next phase of the way he was trying to explain what they're doing in terms of the divide and rule. And he says what we're living with now is a consequence of low wages, low skills, and uncontrolled immigration. Well, if there's low wages and there's low skill, it's not disconnected from the attack on the trade union movement, is not disconnected on the attack on equal access to education. But when it comes to uncontrolled migration, immigration, it is not uncontrolled. It isn't about the pull factors into the UK, it's the push factors. And the push factors are the ones that have made people have to flee their homes, leave their families, leave their loved ones from all over the world. And those push factors can be summed up in the phrase naked exploitation. It's capitalism that's doing this, and it's capitalism that has to end in order for us to realise our future that's going to be sustainable for our children and a world without racism. So solidarity and salute to everyone who's here today. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Retta. The next speaker is Liz Cameron. She is she's got so many positions, I don't know where to start. She's a comrade of mine involved in Unison for a number of years. She's also part of the chair of the Race Equality panel, I think, in Greater Manchester. So I'll hand over to Liz.
Thank you so much, Amin. Got to do a shout out to Amin for his absolutely tireless work. Bringing these things and these matters to our attention. Just respect for that. I really take up from where Rapar finished speaking. Absolutely, it's capitalism that has driven this. And if you will look at the sort of policies that the government is bringing in, and I'm being kind, I'm using nice words for these people currently in leadership, who are breaking down our ability even to stand together today and say anything about it. It is no mistake that they have brought in a bill that will stop us from being able to gather together and voice our objection to things which are being forced upon us. And what voice do the refugees have in all of this? Forced out of their country, treated like nobody. We have doctors and professors who will come over in the Afghan push of immigrants, refugees who are going to be deemed as not good enough, not worthy of, certainly being seen as less than. Those people who are being forced not even to be able to have the dignity of a meal, forced to being in positions where they see themselves brought so low that they can hardly recognise who they are. And yes, they will take their lives. People do. That's how real it is. Because the actual prospect of living the life that's now being forced upon them, as if it wasn't bad enough what they've already gone through. When do we stop? So this bill comes along at time and then you can see that that's what is happening, that the bill is coming when the environment has already been created to not be able to say anything about it. But I am proud today to stand with Salford and to stand as a voice for Greater Manchester Race Equality Panel to say we will not accept this. We will support this bill being absolutely decimated, because it's when people like ourselves gather together and say no that we can make a change. I'm glad for the hopefulness that was shown in this previous speech, but I know that it's going to take a lot from all of us, and more than this demonstration, and practical things to bring people out. And Salford people may not know, because I'm a Salford resident, worked there over 16 years. I also can say that Salford has been the city that has taken disproportionately more refugees than any of our boroughs. Now that's going to surprise people. Salford, little old Salford, well actually that's its record. So I stand with Wilson, I stand with Nat, I stand with my sister holding her banner up so high. And we stand proudly to say refugees are welcome in our city of Salford, they are supported in our city of Salford. We support people in Greater Manchester, we'll continue to support refugees. Refugees are welcome here.
Thank you very much, Liz. Yeah, I'm from Salford City Unison branch, and proud to be here today and to with other people from Salford. I know there's some Salford councillors in the house today as well, Wilson and Nathaniel. Thank you for their support, and I know that Councillor August, who's our lead for equalities, has been at the forefront of fighting for rights for refugees in our city as well. So a big shout out to them for coming today. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to invite someone from Safety for Sisters to come and speak. Please step up and welcome the speakers.
You're not allowed to access the public ones, even though you pay the same tax.
To deliver to the victims of climate change. And climate change hits unequally. If you're poor,
is the stream back now?
If you live in the global
Sorry
south,
about the
you're
buffer.
more likely to be a victim of climate change. You're more likely to suffer from environmental disaster, and you're less likely to have access to the support, to the emergency services, to the help, to the aid that you need to survive or to cope with that disaster. And the world's leaders are guilty of allowing that to continue. They're guilty of allowing millions of people to suffer, particularly in the global south, from climate disaster. This summer we've heard about wildfires, we've heard about hurricanes, we've heard about floods. We haven't heard very much, however, about the famine in Madagascar that's led 1 million people to flee their homes, to be local refugees, to escape from their local consequences of climate change. So during the COP26 court, we're going to be on the streets. I'm going to wait for the fire ambulance to go past. During COP26, we're going to be on the streets demanding not just action on climate change, because we need action on climate change, but demanding climate justice, demanding an end to the inequality caused by climate change, and to demand that the world leaders meeting in those conference halls do something to help the disproportionate impact upon the rest of the world. And we're also going to be pointing out that this isn't a consequence of bad policy today. This is the consequence of decades, of centuries of global development. The countries like Britain have grown fat. Their economies have grown rich upon destroying the economies and destroying the natural resources and destroying the people of the global south. And we have to do something to restore that inequality, to deal with it. So what I want people to do is, as part of their climate campaigning, their environmental campaigning, their anti-racist campaigning, their trade union campaigning, to link in and to bring in the injustice of climate change. And And I hope that all of you, whatever organisation you're part of, will be back here exactly in 2 weeks' time for the Global Day of Action on Climate Justice as part of the environmental process that will be taking place during COP26. Unfortunately, we can't all go to Glasgow, we can't all protest outside the conference hall, but we will be here on the streets in St Peter's Square on the 6th of November, demanding an end to climate injustice and demanding real climate solutions that benefit ordinary people, that aren't just blah, blah, blah from the politicians.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, look, on November the 6th, it's 12 o'clock here at St Peter's Square on the Saturday the November the 6th. We want to have a really large anti-racist block on these protests. And I suppose I'm reaching out to all of you here from different organisations that have come here to fight for refugee rights and against this nationality bill. Let's have a really strong contingent opposing the nationality bill on that COP26 demonstration. Let's march together with our placards saying refugees are welcome here. Let's oppose this bill and fight to make sure that everyone that is involved in the movement for a better planet know that we need to fight for refugee rights in the here and now as part of that protest. So I've got a couple more people that want to speak. If anyone else does, come up and have a word with me now. But I've got 2 more. Please try and stay together till the end. And the next speaker I want to invite to come up is Ibrahim from Rapar. Ibrahim.
Hello everyone. Hello. 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 We want to say refugees are welcome in Manchester. We want to say refugees are welcome in the United Kingdom. As you can see, all of us here are refugees. Some of us are asylum seekers, while others are refugees. We are like saying that the man best servant is a man himself. We that are suffering, we that are in the pain, we are the people that are standing here in front of you. We are so delighted for you to take your precious time, support us in this fight. We know all of you are fighting for humanity. We know all of you are here because of the same blood that is running in the white man vein, the same blood that is running for the African, the Asian, the American, etc., etc. What is a very big thing? During this pandemic, who suffer the most is refugees, asylum seekers. During this pandemic, who suffer the most is the vulnerable women and children. We know women are more vulnerable in society than any other one. The disabled people. But the government is trying to make this system more tougher for us, more tougher than anyone. We are here with another stress. We have home office stress in our head. We have another stress again coming. This bill, we want to say in Rapar and all refugees in Manchester, all organizations, all charity organizations in Manchester, that we will fight to the end. We are not going to relent. Because there is a word that I want all of us to say, we can do it. Can I say we can do it? We can do it. We can do it. We can do it. We can do it. Refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Please and please, we know yes, it is not an easy task for all of us. It is very difficult. Now it's just like a game. The Home Office has their own strategy. They want us to relent, but with the help of you, with we. The word we is a very powerful word. A very powerful that can unite humanity. It's a very powerful word that can make us come together and fight this fight. We cannot fight this fight alone. We need a backup of few people. I'm so happy today to see each and every one of us here. The black, the white, children, Asian, Africa, the whole world is present here today to help us fight this fight. And I know with all of you, your support, we can fight this fight. We want to tell the government that we are pleading. This bill they want to pass is not good for us. We are pleading to them to reconsider it again. We want to say to the trade union, we want their solidarity. We want to say a very big thanks to you for you organizing this protest. We want to say a very big thanks to each and every one of us that stand here today. I'm so happy and happy to see each and every one of us stand here and fight this fight. And I believe at the end of the tunnel, we are going to win. Thank you very much. Let me pass it to Noah.
Hello everyone. Let's make a noise. Refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Thank you. I just want to say a short words. You know, as a refugee, I've got experience too. It's not easy to leave your family, your country of birth, friends, and everyone to to seek an asylum for asylum. So I really appreciate you guys. You have all come here to fight this bill. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Say it loud, say it clear. Say it loud, say it clear. Okay, so we've got a couple more speakers. We'll hopefully finish by 3 for people. Hang in there. The next speaker is Jenny Christopher. She's worked alongside me to try and make sure that our unions start to fight racism as much as we do, and I'm really pleased she's come here today and been part of this and organising this with me in the last few weeks. Jenny.
Hi everyone, it's great that you're here to add your support. It's absolutely phenomenal. I was just talking to someone about reading a newspaper article about the anti-refugee bill, and having read the article I looked at some of the comments down from people below, and of course the comments were very negative. And why is that? Because our government has actually presented a very negative view of refugees. They represent them as scroungers, they represent them as people taking our jobs. Oh dear, having an impact on our health service, can you hear me? Yes, loud and clear, which is totally untrue. I've heard from all of the, many of the other speakers about the massive contributions that refugees have made to the health service, towards education. In fact, they actually impact almost every aspect of our life. What people don't hear about are the very positive contributions that have been made historically over the years and what continue to be made. What this government's actually doing, this racist government is actually doing, is scapegoating refugees. When indeed, refugees add so much value. The unfortunate thing is, what we have to do is send the message out loud and clear that refugees are welcome here and that they do indeed continue to make a massive, massive contribution. If you think about it, the UK takes in very, very few refugees in comparison with other countries. They give the impression that they are welcoming and supportive, but that is not the case. This anti-refugee bill is going to severely restrict any legal routes of coming into the country, which is absolutely appalling. For some people, they actually don't fully appreciate how that will impact on refugees. Refugees actually contribute and help all of us in terms of what they do. Going back to this article, I was looking through the negative comments, and some were actually agreeing with Priti Patel. Why do you think that is? That's because a lot of what's happening now in this very toxic environment is around racism. And racism is what fueling the negative tropes around migrants and refugees. What we have to do as individuals is educate ourselves and learn more about and get in contact. And also, can you hear me loud and clear? Refugees are welcome here, can you hear me? Right, I'll continue. So what we have to do ourselves, what we have to continue to do is, wherever we are, every single one of us can make an impact. If someone makes a negative comment to you about a refugee, it is your place, you have a role to do to re-educate them. People think that they don't have any agency in terms of what's happening. Every single one of us does. It's a fight for all of us. A fight for every single refugee. It's a fight for all of us. We need to be supporting one another in every single situation that we can. And finally, I can say to my brothers and sisters here, it's just so great to see so much valuable support. I hope that each and every one of you, before you leave here, think about what positive contribution you can actually make towards opposing this anti-refugee bill. Absolutely awful. Anyway, I shall end now because Amin's giving me the strange looks. That's it. Hand me back the mic. But say it loud and say it clear. Refugees are welcome here.
Thank you very much, Jenny, Christopher, many you. I think she makes a very important point, you know. Where would our football team be if it wasn't for refugees? Where would our food be in this country? I shudder to think, without the contribution of refugees in Britain in the last 50 years. You know, we've enriched the UK by different nationalities coming and living in this country. We've not made it poorer, we've made it richer for the experience of all of us being here. So that's the sort of world we want to live in, where everyone's welcome and made to contribute and to the society we live in. And actually no more so black people and people from different nationalities have contributed in the NHS and making sure that the NHS is a service that for all of us that we need and use. So I'm going to invite Karen Reisman, who's on Unison NEC, who's our health worker, to address us about why we're opposing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and great pleasure in bringing solidarity greetings from Unison to all the people who are fighting the nationality bill, all the refugees and asylum seekers who come to this country over the hundreds of years. And traditionally, working class people have welcomed refugees. They've welcomed them because they know they make a difference to our lives. Amin is right, the health service would not exist. It was created and built and sustained on the back of migrant workers, refugees and asylum seekers, and it would die today if those people left. And sadly, we have tens and thousands of qualified nurses, doctors, OTs, skilled workers who are not allowed to work because this government would rather see people die in a pandemic than they would to allow refugees and asylum seekers to work. And that's the sort of disgraceful behaviour that this government does. And they've done it since the beginning. But I think the viciousness and the brazenness with which they now use racism to divide us is more shocking by the day. They think it's legitimate for people to die in boats trying to escape. They don't ask, why would you get in a tiny little dinghy and try and cross the channel? They don't ask why you would do that. You would have to be desperate. And yet they don't care. They just want to portray you as the problem. And they want to convince people in this country that the reason you can't get a house or you can't get a good job or you're on crap wages is because there are migrants and asylum seekers and refugees here. And it is absolutely nonsense. The reason we have people on low pay is because private companies and the government make money by making us work for poverty wages. You see that in care work, you see that in retail work, you see that in the health service, we see it on public transport, we see it in the post office, all those key worker jobs that sustained people through the pandemic. They choose to pay poverty wages. They can decide not to, but they don't. And we have poverty wages where it doesn't matter how many refugees you have here, an employer will always try and pay the lowest wages. And the only way we will ever stop them is by standing together. Black and white, whether you're born here or you're born somewhere else, whether you come here as an asylum seeker or not. We need to stand together because this government is committed. They said let the bodies pile high, and they don't care which bodies they are as long as they're working class people's bodies, black or white. And we are seeing the bodies pile up again. 5 plane loads of people in Britain die every week from COVID. This week, last week, next week.
So, go on.
I'll try, but oh no, it has worked again. And they don't care because they are our bodies that die. They're never the rich who die. In the health service, 93% of the doctors who've died were from a black or minority ethnic background. You look at the care workers who've died. And I think we have to say that the horrible way that they get away with that is to get us to turn on each other, is to get us to look at other people being the enemy, other people being different, and to see ourselves as competing with the poor worker next door, the poor worker worker across the road and the poor worker who comes here on a boat or by a plane. And they're not our competitors. Around the world, it is our big businesses who both create refugees and then do nothing to try and stop them and then scapegoat them. You look at the climate change and all they're doing to destroy the world, and it's poor people who are the victims of that. Rich people can always move, poor people end up being driven away because they can't live where they are. And we have to stand against a system that continues to impoverish all of that, and we will never do that if we fight each other. That's why, as a worker, as a trade unionist, as a health worker, I say refugees are welcome here. We need more of them, not less, in order to solve the problems of this country, and we need a different system in this country, because one that's based on profit is never going to deliver for you, whether you are black or white. I think it's great that we're here today. It's great that we're part of a national movement, and we have to carry on having this argument with working class people whenever they fall for the Tory lies, and people do fall for those Tory lies, and that's why it's so important that we stand here today. And where we are, there's 1.3 million workers in unison. We need to carry on that fight at work as well. We need to say to people, stop falling for the Tory lies and start fighting for our rights, black and white together.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, so, you know, I think we have to take heart from the fact that millions in the last year have fought for Black Lives Matter and been mobilised in that, not just in this country but in America and across the world. We have to mobilise those forces again to fight for against racism and against this refugee bill. And I'm going to invite Naila Ashraf. She's our final speaker from Stand Up to Racism, an organisation which our trade union is proud to support, as well as the TUC. Naila Ashraf on behalf of Stand Up to Racism.
Thanks so much for that. And can I just start by saying thank you to everybody that's come out. It's absolutely fantastic that so many groups are represented here today, because that really reflects the unity of our movement. Because let's be very clear, the Tories want to divide us. They want us to blame each other for their problems. They want us to pay the price. And the only way they can get away with doing that is for us to blame other people. The refugee, the migrant, the black person, the person, you know, on benefits. That's what this is about. It's about dividing us and ruling us. And I think the fact that we have called this demonstration together with so many different groups is actually a message, a clear message to them that we will not feed into their lies, we will not accept their lies. And I think this has to be the start of a movement, a massive movement in support of refugees. We already know the horrendous figures of people dying in the Mediterranean and the Channel. There are many, many more that we don't even hear about. It is absolutely shocking that actually, you know, it's okay for, like, to allow those people to die in that way. Nobody would put their families, their children and themselves in those dinghies if they weren't desperate. And the reason they are desperate is because this government has been involved in illegal wars abroad. This government has been involved in supporting dictators and you know, the likes of which, you know, is shocking. We are responsible for the fact that they have, well, not we, not people here today, but actually our government is responsible for creating a situation that means hundreds of thousands of people have had to flee Afghanistan. Hundreds of thousands of people are trying to flee Iraq, Yemen, Syria, all of these countries where our governments have had a hand in creating the devastation there. And I think our job here is to hold our government to account, to say to them that we will not allow them in our name to blame the refugee. We will not allow this government to allow people to drown in the numbers that they drown. Because let's be quite clear, it's already impossible for refugees to seek asylum in Britain. It's near impossible. That's why they come and take that risk and lose their lives in the numbers that they do. This bill will make it even harder, because actually this bill will mean that there's tiny percentage of people that do make it onto our shores will then be criminalised. And therefore we have to stand with everybody and not allow this government to talk about, you know, the good refugee versus the other refugees. All refugees are welcome here. And that's what we are here to say. All refugees are welcome here. There's no good or bad refugee. Every refugee that wants to escape Afghanistan should be allowed to make safe passage to Britain. The reason they are fleeing Afghanistan and the thousands they are fleeing is because of our occupation, our wars. Let's be very clear about that. And therefore we say they are all welcome here. So I want to say some practical stuff. It's absolutely key that we continue to be organised to build the movement. I'm from an organisation called Stand Up to Racism. We have a stall here. We've got fact sheets about what this bill is about. Please take a copy of that fact sheet away with you. We need to be armed with the figures and the truth so that we can smash the myths that this government has created. As Karen said earlier, the nurse from the NHS, you are more likely to be treated by an immigrant in this country. And if anyone is in any doubt, this government would like to go on about health tourism. Actually, it's a migrants that continue to keep this country going. If it wasn't for the black NHS workers, the NHS would have been crippled over the last 2 years. That is quite clear. The people that have lost their lives, have been black workers on the front line of keeping this country going during the COVID crisis. It wasn't the politicians, it wasn't the bankers, it wasn't the millionaires, it was low-paid workers, black and white low-paid workers, and that's the thing that we always need to remember. And they are part of our community, whether you're black or white, you're part of our community and we stand with you. So join us on the 6th of November. Stand Up to Racism will be part of an anti-racist bloc because we recognise that climate change is going to impact poor people across the world massively. It's going to create more refugees and it's going to create, as a result of that, this government is going to use racism to divide us. So join us on the 6th of November and we need to continue to campaign against this bill. And I want to say this, there are people that will say, but what can we do? There is a majority in Parliament, the Tories are a majority. Let me say this quite clearly. Whatever they vote for in Parliament, we can smash on the streets, and we will smash on the streets. We have had a history of fighting. Everything we have fought for has come from fighting on the streets. So let's take back to the streets, let's own the streets, and let's say refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone for coming today. I want to say that, like Naila said at the end, this is just the start of the fight around the Nationality and Borders Bill. It hasn't made it to its third reading yet. We need to mobilise in even bigger numbers when that third reading comes around. We need to have other days of action, we need to have other protests when that happens. But to be able to do all that, we need to be organised. So I will put out, and I'm sure others will be from other organisations, we should meet up again, try and network together, try and plan something even bigger in Manchester when we hear about when the third reading is going to be. But in the meantime, like I said before, we should all be on the anti-racist block on November the 6th for COP26 demonstration. That's an opportunity to speak to the wider movement, to other groups, to other organisations that are concerned about the change to our climate, to other trade unions, to get them involved, to let them know more about the Nationality Borders Bill, why it needs to be opposed, and why we all need to stand together with refugees. So thank you all for coming today. Please get involved, organise together, we can defeat this, because they may have the majority in Parliament, but we have the majority on the streets, we have the majority in the communities, we have the majority in our trade unions that can stand together and fight against racism in this horrible racist bill. Thank you.
So, go on. Sorry about that, I was just getting a video. Yeah, so that if there's anyone still watching, that's it today. Can't remember when the next protest is, but I'll be going live on Facebook and YouTube from now on. I've figured out the way to do it. So yeah, make sure you subscribe on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.